Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Queppet, and I'm here to help you play a bigger game with your life. And today, my lucky friend, I'm going to be inviting you to play the biggest, most important game in all of existence. And I call it the Omnigame. But you can call it basically the game of getting what you want. And we all play this game pretty much every day, all the time. The issue is that we're not super great at it, usually. That usually we end up not getting what we want, not wanting what we have, or in just, some various state of discomfort or dissatisfaction with things. And so the purpose of this video is to kick off a new series, which I'm calling Enter the Omnigame, which is going to help you learn how to play this bigger game of life and how to win it. Now, in some ways, stepping into the world of the Omnigame is similar to stepping into the world of Star Wars. There is a light side, there is a dark side, and there is a magical mystical force that you can use to enact your will on reality. But unlike Star Wars, which happens in a galaxy far, far away, the Omnigame happens right here in the real world, just a few levels down the rabbit hole, or a few layers up in abstraction, if you would want to put it technically, okay? And also, this, the Force or whatever, it's not some sci-fi magic, it's real. It's the power of your consciousness, the power of intention that you can use if you know how to use it to get what you want. And so this is what I want to be talking to you about. This is what the world I want to be inviting you into, because it really is, real life is better than any fictional world ever created. Real life is far more compelling, far deeper, far more magical and wonderful than you could possibly imagine if you don't know how to play the game. And so what we got to do is we got to teach you what the game is, how to play it, how to win it. And that's what this Enter the Omnigame series is all about. So if you want to enter into a cool journey here, then watch this video. I think you're going to love it. Now, before I get into the topic properly, I want you to click the link in the description and sign up and get my free Anabolic Optimism guide, okay? This is really important because most people understand that being too pessimistic is not a good strategy. You're gonna end up catabolic, you're gonna break down your mindset, you're just gonna, it's gonna suck. You're not gonna be able to see opportunity, you're not gonna be able to have hope, that sort of thing. So we get that, but also being too positive actually can be a problem too. It can cause you to be indulgent. It can cause you to be weak in the face of conflict or malice or anything like that. And so what we got to do is we got to find powerful optimism that doesn't break down and can really hold up to the darkness and trials and tribulations that life throws at you. And that's what Anabolic Optimism, this guide, is all about. Trigger warning. A lot of you won't like this. It'll challenge you. You'll realize that, hey, you actually have way more power than perhaps you want, because maybe you like being a victim. People who like being victims, who don't like being able to acknowledge that, hey, they have a huge amount of control over their life, they can get good things. This will be super upsetting. So don't do it if you're that kind of person. But if you like power, you like the ability to get the things that you want, you like responsibility, all that kind of stuff, then you will love this guide. Click the link in the description, sign up. Fundamentally, the problem we all have is that we have trouble getting what we want, right? We all want things, but we don't have all of those things. And so we're like, right? Now, there's a lot of things that you can do to help you get this stuff. And this is, in general, we could consider this the whole field of self-development, right? And this is something that I became obsessed with at a very young age because I wanted stuff and I couldn't get it. And I was very frustrated. And so I went on this journey of how can I get the stuff that I want? Well, simple answer is you got to do the things that brings you the stuff, right? I was like, okay, well, I got to do the stuff. But then I realized, shoot, how do I get myself to do the stuff? Right? And so then it becomes a question of, well, how do I get myself to do these things, right? So then I can get the stuff that I want, right? And that opens up a whole big can of worms. There's all kinds of stuff involved in getting yourself to do the things that get you the stuff you want, right? There's mindset, there's self-talk, there's religion, there's productivity systems, there's journaling, there's meditation, there's, this talk, this visualization, this, that, and the other. There's a million things, right? And all of them have some legitimate power, right? Now, as I studied all of these things and I became a professional coach, and I've worked with now hundreds of people individually, thousands of people through my programs and that sort of thing. And I've produced a lot of this stuff. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've got a lot of stuff figured out. I realized actually that with all these techniques and all these pathways, there is sort of like one thing that started emerging out of all of them. There is like a master power that flowed through all of these things that ultimately affected their effectiveness. And it's this abstraction of all of the power that's found in these different techniques of like mindset, self-talk, productivity, habit replacement, all this kind of stuff. Like the thing that you raise out of it, that's what I'm calling psychomagnetic power. Okay. And this is not an entirely brand new concept. People have been talking about this stuff for thousands of years. This is, I believe it's the kingdom of God, the Holy Spirit. It's the way, whatever it is. There's a million different systems of thought that hit on this thing. Why am I not using those? Because each person has a different take on it. And I've never heard it really explained in a way that from A to Z actually taught you how to use this power. Okay. And that's what I'm setting out to do here. I want it to be clear beyond all doubt with no, hand waving that actually explains to you how to use this force, the power of your consciousness to get the shit you want, because it's possible and you can understand it. It's just that the people who usually understand it, I think they just get so hyped on it that they just go out and start using it. And then when it comes time to explain it, they're just kind of like, you do this thing. You just gotta like love and you gotta like have intention and visualize things and stuff like that. And it's like, it's right, but if it doesn't all click for you, well then you don't have the power, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm calling it psychomagnetic power because I want my own take on it. I don't want any baggage associated with it. I want you to listen to me with fresh ears. And so if you can learn how to wield this stuff, then you're gonna get the stuff that you want. Before I hand you a lightsaber, I have to figure out, are you on the light side or the dark side? Because there are different ways to generate psychomagnetic force. And there are some ways that I think are good, and there's some ways that I think that are very destructive. And so it's like, I want you to be powerful. I want you to be able to hold the intention for something and you get that thing, right? That's the measure of your psychomagnetic power. And you all have some already. So think about it. It's like, if you set out to change your habits, do you do it? If so, well, then you have relatively good psychomagnetic power. If you don't, well, then you're lacking it. All right. Like, can you follow your morals? Can you follow your values? Can you be disciplined? Can you get success in something you put your effort into? If not, then these are all the kinds of power that you need to build. But we got to look at where you're drawing the power from. Okay. Hands down, this is the stuff that when I explain it in a coaching session, it changes someone's life. A lot of times they cry. A lot of times they'll email me later and be like, holy shit, my entire life has changed. I was using dark side energy for everything I frickin' did. And now everything's so much easier. Everything's so much happier. Everything's so much lighter. Like my life has been transformed. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. So please just listen. Okay. Just stay with me. So the first thing we got to look at here is the idea of intention and charging your intention. All right. So when we have an intention, we basically say, I want X. Okay. Now, if you just have that thought sitting in your head and there's no charge attached to it, it has no power. We have to attach power to it. And we do this by adding emotion to it. Okay. The more energy, emotional energy that you can connect to a thought, the more power it's going to have. Just think about it. I mean, like if you think about like, I want to have some extra money, but there's no emotion attached to it. How likely are you going to take any action or whatever to get more money? You're not, right? But if there's a huge, deep burning, intensity behind that thought, you're probably going to be able to find a way, right? So that's pretty obvious. But the thing that's not so obvious is where this charge really comes from. And it comes from your identity. And your identity, you can think of that as basically the definition of the kind of person you are. The kind of person you are determines the kind of things you care about and feel about. Right? And so because of that, all of your emotion, it has to travel through your identity. It has to be connected to your sense of you in some form or another. Identity is the key to understanding your emotionality. All right. And it's really about like what kind of person you are. Are you the kind of person who cares about the way you dress? Well, if so, then if you go out, if you have to sprint outside without taking a few minutes to think about what you put on, well, then maybe you're going to feel uncomfortable because you're the kind of guy who cares about how he thinks or about how he dresses. And so, maybe you're going to feel uncomfortable then, right? So all this kind of stuff, it plays into everything. It plays into everything you feel, and therefore it plays into all of your intentions, the kind of person you are. Okay, second stop on our path to understanding psychomagnetic power is we got to understand status. All right. So your brain is more or less a giant status seeking mechanism. It's designed to pursue the things which you define as better and avoid the things which you define as worse. And a lot of this can happen consciously, but a lot of it happens even unconsciously. Like your body, all your autonomic nervous systems and involuntary functions, they're all trying to pursue healthier, better, or optimum status rather than less dysfunctional, unhealthy status. Okay. So then it flows into the conscious world very much so. So we're all trying to get more social status, more moral status, more sexual status, more financial status. This is what our brain wants. And what kinds of status you care about in some ways is sort of biological. Like we all want to be fit. We all want to be healthy. Most of us have a relatively, normally distributed sex drive, that kind of stuff, and care about those kinds of status pretty uniformly. But there's all the different kind of stuff. Like we're going back to how much you care about your clothing, how much you care about maybe your car, how much you care about how much money is in the bank account, all this kind of stuff. And the kind of status then that you care about, where does that come from? That's where the identity piece comes in again. Okay, so once we understand identity is important, and then we understand that we want status relative to what our identity defines as good, the final piece of the puzzle, and where we can start getting into the light side and dark side stuff, is the relationship between status and identity. Okay? And this is where it gets nuanced in a sense, all right? But it's actually kind of black and white. So there is like a light side and a dark side to the way in which you can relate, your identity to your status. One is the dark side, which is what I would call a vacuous configuration or a vacuous intention. Okay, because like a black hole, it's like a vacuum. And then on the other side, there's the light side, and this is what I would call a radiant configuration or a radiant intention, radiant energy, all right? This is the light side. So let's get into these, and we're going to start with the dark side because you got to know what this is. You got to know how it works because chances are you are using it and it shows up all over the world. And it can be powerful. It can be extremely powerful. It can also be extremely horrible as well. And so we're going to start there, and then we'll move into the light side, and that's where we ultimately want to be. So let's get into it. So the fundamental way that the dark side works is it says that your value, your identity as a person, comes entirely from your status, that they're actually one and the same, that your worth is your status. Okay. And the kind of assumption underneath that is that you don't have any inherent value in and of yourself. You're kind of like an empty vessel, and you earn your worth as you do good things. And that's it. That's the way it works. And you might be thinking like, well, what's so wrong with that? I mean, like, yeah, if you don't do anything good, then you're not good. Well, you're in the dark side. Congratulations. All right. The issue with this is how it then works in practice. And there are different levels of effectiveness on the dark side. Same with the light side. So let's talk about the lowest level of effectiveness. So for someone operating on the vacuous dark side here, unless they go out and earn the financial points, unless they earn the moral points by following some code, unless they go out and earn the sexual points by getting affirmation and hooking up, then they're just not good. They're like this black hole. They got to fill themselves with all these status points. And if they don't fill themselves up, then they suck. Okay. And this is a lot, people don't necessarily like to admit to this, but this is where most of us operate from. And the reason why most of us operate from this place is because basically you grow up and the world teaches you to operate this way because it's constantly trying to manipulate you. Every single time a parent showed you conditional love, like they showed you hate. They rejected you when you got bad grades and showed you love when you got good grades. Well, that kind of communicates, well, hey, you're not lovable unless you get good grades. And so you kind of internalize that. Maybe your peers, they bully you because you don't wear cool clothes, and you might realize, oh, geez, I guess I don't have worth in and of myself, and I can only get that worth if I wear cool clothes. And, these kinds of messages are perpetuated all throughout media because they're powerful. And it's like, if I can get you to think that the only way you could be good is if you buy my program, well, which you should probably do, by the way. Universal man. But if I convince you that you suck otherwise, well, then I can control you. I can extract resources from you, right? And a lot of people understand this. And so a lot of our culture operates in this way. And so people internalize this and they end up on the dark side. And like, taken to the most extreme, like, why is this the dark side? Well, it's because if people don't have inherent worth, well, then you can justify treating them terribly if they don't have the status that you care about. So for example, say you lack the status of being of, the Aryan race. Well, the Nazis, they said, well, we can kill you because you lack the status that we value, right? So really bad stuff comes from going down this route. Now, this power shows up in different levels of effectiveness. Some people can wield it very well and they become like these Sith lords, but most people just kind of become wretched. And if you're wretched, well, then this is where you're at, okay? So the lowest level of vacuous energy would be to operate from a place of self-rejection, all right? And this is a place where you think that you don't have the status, and so you suck. And so if you think you suck, you're going to treat yourself like you suck. And usually what this looks like is just extreme escapism. So your brain, like I said, it's like this big status-seeking mechanism. Basically, the whole part of your brain is designed to unite you with things that you define as good and avoid things that you define as bad. And so if you define yourself as bad, well, then what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to escape the experience of being yourself. And usually you're going to treat yourself poorly. And so that's what addicts do, is that they just treat themselves poorly. They run away into some kind of oblivion, and it just, their life doesn't get better when they do this, right? So this is the escapism spiral where, you feel worse and you behave worse, and then you feel worse and then you behave worse, right? That's the lowest level. No one wants to be there. So if you're there, don't worry, I'm going to have a solution for you here in a bit. Now, many of us then, we're not really there. Well, sometimes we are probably, but really it's probably the mid tier. This is where the bulk of people in general, I would say, operate a lot of the time. And this is the mid-level of vacuous effectiveness, vacuous psychomagnetic power would be of operating from a place of need and pain. Someone who wants to go to the gym from the mentality here they would say basically, you suck unless you go to the gym. You got to go to the gym and you got to earn your worth. Right? And so what they do is they create pain for themselves in the moment by hating themselves in the moment, and then they offer themselves relief if they go and they do the thing. Maybe it's, sometimes it's even just like being nice to another person. It's like, hey, you're a shitty person unless you're kind to them. And you better, if you don't want to be shitty and have me mad at you inside of here, well, then you're going to go be nice to them. And basically they use kind of self-hate to induce pain, which then drives them to do something else. Now, sometimes people don't even induce it themselves. They let external circumstances force it. So if you're someone who can only study for a test the night before, well, then you're using this kind of incentive. You're saying, hey, I'm not worth studying for it ahead of time. I'm just going to wait to the end. And then my fear of becoming worse is going to drive me to do it. Okay. And so this can kind of get some stuff done, but the downside is that you have to be in pain. You have to function off discomfort in order to do good things, okay? And so ultimately that sucks, and it's gonna be very difficult to do anything sort of long-term high level because usually there's no immediate pain involved. So you would just have to kind of keep this pressure of hatred on yourself in order to get yourself to do it. Now, what about those really highly functional, super, effective evil geniuses? What about them? How do they operate? How do the Sith Lords generate their power? Really, simply, it comes down to narcissism. And as we'll see, it's kind of an inversion of the good side. They decide that they're just better than other people. And because they're better, they behave better. It's like, I'm above this. I'm above this, crappy stuff. I'm going to be kicking butt. I'm going to be reaching the highest status so that I can be better than all you scrubs. Okay. And that can work. And you can see this. You can see some of the highest and worst people in society behaving on a high level of narcissism. And yeah, it works. You can generate a lot of power this way. But the problem is it requires you to lie to yourself. It's not invincible because no status is perfect. And also, if you're coming from this place that you don't have any status to begin with, you always need more. Well, need is going to be amplified as we move through this series and we start talking about the mechanisms. So nothing you get is ever good enough. So the narcissist, they're kind of constantly, they're like just a black hole and like functioning at maximum hyperdrive. They just need to stuff. It's never enough. And they're always ultimately kind of insecure. They're worried about losing the status. They're worried about, maybe I'm not, maybe that guy's even higher than me. And so they become obsessed. They're always insecure. And if something goes bad, they freak out. And usually most people like this, they have some kind of extreme escape too, similar to like they have that they don't feel good enough a lot. Even though they're narcissistic, they basically repress the feeling of not being good enough by some kind of extreme escape. Okay, and you can probably think of this. It's like that high-powered evil lawyer in the movie. All right, maybe he. Maybe he's got alcoholism, or he has all these affairs, or maybe he just he's a psychopathic murderer on the side, like American Psycho, right? Like, this is the dark side. Yeah, it can be powerful, but yeah, you don't want to be using this energy. So what's the solution? How do you get out of the dark side? What's the alternative power? Well, we got to come back to the configuration, the way that you relate to your status. Basically, we have to say that you have your worth and then your status. And they're connected, but they're not one and the same. Dark side says they're one and the same. They say your worth is your status, all right? On the light side, you recognize that your worth is actually inherent. You have dignity. Dignity is the concept that you have some inherent, inalienable, invincible worth, that you're already perfectly good at your core. It's the idea that your human life is intrinsically good and nothing can make it more valuable or less valuable, that it's just good. People have a lot of resistance to accepting this idea in practice. In theory, we're all about it. The entire Western civilization is built upon the idea that you have inherent worth and value, and that every life matters. Even if you're a mass murderer, you're still treated with relative respect by the law. You might be locked up, but, your humanness is not taken away from you. Okay. And so we recognize it at a high level, but personally, we really struggle with this. It's like, wait, you're trying to tell me that no matter how good I show up or how bad I show up, that I don't change, that I'm just good and that I should just love myself? Well, if I do that, well, then why would I do good things if I just love myself? And that's the big problem that a lot of us run into. It's like, well, you have to actually love yourself, okay? And so here's the trick, is that like you have to come to the place of learning how to reflect your goodness in your status. Basically, you have to reflect your dignity, honor your dignity in the way that you show up in the world. And you might be thinking, well, why should I do that? That sounds like a lot of work. Because if goodness is your nature, then denying your nature is going to bring you pain. All right, so let's look at it like this. All right, this is the analogy I use to teach my clients. All right, so here's my finger. All right, it bends forward like this, and that's the nature of my finger. Due to its configuration, it bends like this quite easily. Now, if I start bending it backward, it's going to start hurting. And if I bend it really far back, it's going to break and it's going to really hurt. So if I go against the nature of the way my finger is designed, we're in trouble. We're going to have lots of pain, right? Same thing goes true if you have a nature of goodness. If you behave in a way that is contrary to that goodness, then you're going to have pain. All right? And that's good, because that pain tells you that something is out of alignment, right? And so when it comes to shame, there's two different kinds of shame. There is the shame of the dark side, and that's like, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough status, and so I feel bad, and so I am bad, okay? And my only option is to hate myself into getting that status back. That's dark side shame, and it's super destructive and toxic. But there is a good kind of shame too, and basically it's like, I did bad. Basically, I dishonored my worth. I did not show up in a way that was good, and so that hurts, that feels bad, But it's good that that feels bad because it's incentive. It shows me what the right way is. It shows me that, hey, there's something wrong here that needs to be corrected. In the same way that physical pain when you hurt your body is good. It helps you protect your body. It helps you know how to work in harmony and alignment with it. So just like there was levels to your effectiveness on the dark side, there is on the light side too. And the first level is basic self-care, meaning you care about your major pains enough to start solving them. So, maybe this means like you start working on whatever addictions you have. Maybe it means that you start solving the most serious problems you have interpersonally, or maybe you just start like giving yourself more rest and relaxation because you've been working yourself to the bone. Or maybe it means that you just start baseline productivity because you've been totally slothful and it's been destroying your life. All right. So level 1 of dignity, of light side, of radiant psychomagnetic usage is self-care. All right. Next level would be self-affirmation, where you start treating yourself and behaving like someone who is good. You behave like someone who is able to honor their own dignity in the way that they show up, the way that they dress, the way that they show up at their work, they do their job, the way in which they interact with other people. They see themselves with dignity, so they don't need to worry about getting the attention from and the affirmation from other people because they're starting to feel, hey, I'm kind of good. Now, this is a great place to be, and most people should be able to get here. This is where all good people at least operate on. But even from here, there's a sensation that there might be something more. And this is where you start getting into the high level stuff. And this is where I want to get all of you. And this is the level of self-realization. And at the level of self-realization is that like you really understand your goodness and you really understand how this stuff works and you realize that you can do whatever you want to do more or less. I mean, like I'm not talking about bend the laws of physics or anything like that, but like you can learn how to willfully induce positive flow states. You can do that. It's possible. And you can do things with ease, with joy. You realize that it's not just this grind. It's not this hard mode life, like getting from the dark side, the idea of getting better, stronger, whatever, is that you got to get tougher and you got to push harder and you got to be, and it's like, no. On the light side, it's more about ease. It's about joy. It's about passion. And this is stuff that you can learn how to do on purpose, very clearly, with no mystery involved. And that's what this is all about. But it doesn't matter if you don't get the idea that you're good to begin with, all right? Now, there is a kind of a con to getting really good at the light side stuff in that people very invested in the dark side hate you. And you guys might see some of this in the comments below. In fact, I'm counting on it. Like, I've got some good energy here. I feel good. I think this is good stuff. I think it's incredibly exciting. And people who are really invested in hate and, toughness and all this kind of thing, they're going to see this and they're going to get mad because they're going to call me a trickster or a salesman or a snake oil salesman or stuff like that because they don't want to believe that something could be so good, that life could be so good, that they could actually have joy, they could have happiness, and that they don't need to just hate themselves and, hate themselves to the success because, I get it. I get it. I've been there actually, because it's like you get so invested in wielding this dark side energy because it's the only thing that you know. Someone comes along and says, hey, that route sucks. There's a way better one. You're just like, screw you, man. No way. You don't know me. You don't know me. Ugh. And then, they just kind of vomit negativity at you. And I get it because, it's really disappointing to find out that you've been doing stuff all wrong. But if you embrace a better path, then better things come of it. The main point here is that you can do anything from either light side, radiant energy, or dark side, vacuous energy, all right? And really anything. So talking about the gym, you can hate yourself to go to the gym. You can basically say, hey, unless you go to the gym and you earn those status points of physical fitness, well, then you suck, all right? You're just a little fatty. You're just a little blah, 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 all right? That's dark side, obviously. Or you can go light side and be like, hey, man, you're good. You're really good. You're inherently perfectly good. Going to the gym won't make you any better. But since you are good, you might as well reflect that in your health, in your physical strength. You might as well give yourself that gift because you're good and you deserve good gifts. And I want to give you good gifts because I love you, man. And you hug yourself and you go and you do it, right? And you can do that with everything, right? Instead of like in a social situation, being in this vacuous state of like, oh, I need to get their affirmation and playing a game that you can't fully control. You can't control whether they like you or not, right? But like you're going to try and do it. You're going to try and earn them status points, get them to like you. Well, all you can do is either try to, overpower them by being like in a state where they have to like you and, kiss your boots. Or you can try and manipulate them and by being fake and, putting on a face and doing all this kind of stuff. And, even then you can't fully control it. So there's going to be insecurity there. You're going to be like this black hole, this needy person. And usually you end up actually less attractive because of that. The alternative side would be to be on the light side and say, hey, I'm already good. Their affirmation won't make me any better. And so all I got to do is I got to share my goodness with them. I'm going to give them the gift of my attention. I'm going to give them the gift of my, goodwill, of my good ideas, maybe advice. Maybe I'm going to tell them a joke. Maybe I'll just smile at them. I'm going to give them gifts. And it's like going from the state of going around people trying to get $100 from them. How well is that going to work? Not well. They're not going to like it if they know you're just trying to get $100 from them. All right. But that's what it is on the dark side. Either you force them to give you the $100 because you're a bully, or you're manipulative and kind of pitiful, trying to get it from them. The alternative route on the light side is that you're going around handing out $100 bills. Just handing them out because you're giving gifts and you're good, you're full, you're abundant, you're flowing, you're letting it flow out, right? And it's so much better. It's so much better. What if someone doesn't like it? Like, I don't want your money. I don't like the way you smile at me. Well, in that case, all right, I'll keep my $100 bill. You have a good day, sir. And it's just, that's it. And you're fine. You're not losing anything because you're operating from a radiant perspective. And this is the key to everything. And until you have this, nothing else matters. Like literally, like this is the biggest thing that I've seen change people's lives. So please take this in. Love yourself, recognize your inherent worth, recognize your dignity. And if you can learn how to bring that into all of your interactions, well, then they're all going to be that much more powerful, because the light side is more powerful because it's focused on, it's aspirational. It's the focus on the thing that is rather than the thing that is not, right? The dark side, all it is the absence of goodness. There's nothing actually there. And so the affirmation is always more powerful. The light always wins eventually. And if you struggle with this kind of stuff, then like I said, make sure you click the link in the description and sign up for my Anabolic Optimism guide. It'll really help with some of the more tricky situations around how to be positive and on the light side with this kind of stuff. And also the rest of the series is going to really pull the curtain back and figure out how to wield this stuff effectively. It's going to teach you how to wield the lightsaber, how to do the force push, maybe even a little force lightning if we get into it. But it's going to be good. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much what I have for you. I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. Please let me know what part hit you the strongest in the comments below. Make sure you get the Anabolic Optimism guide and just play big. Play this Omnigame. Start working this stuff. And I know it's going to make a difference in your life. So that's what I have for you. I'll see you in the next one.